Can a sole proprietor use a health spending account? Technically, yes, but it's one of the most misunderstood and restrictive areas of the tax code, and getting it wrong could lead you into serious problems with the CRA. Hi, my name is Mitch. I'm one of the co-founders of Frontier HSA. Today I'm going to break down how HSAs work for sole proprietors, why the rules are so restrictive, and when it actually makes sense to use one. Here's the short answer. Depending on your business structure, there are three main scenarios you may run into when setting up an HSA. One, if you're a sole proprietor flying solo with no employees, bad news for you, you can't use an HSA. Two, if you're a sole proprietor with employees, you can use one, but the rules are restrictive and tricky to navigate. Three, if you're incorporated, you're in great shape. You can use an HSA pretty easily, even if you're the sole employee. Let's dive into each scenario. So, scenario one, you're a sole proprietor with no employees. Why doesn't this work? Well, an HSA is technically a form of insurance in which the employer reimburses the employee for eligible medical expenses. When you're a sole proprietor, there's no real distinction between you and your business. You are the business. So you can't really reimburse yourself and call it a benefit. The CRA just sees that as a personal expense. Now, scenario two, you're a sole proprietor with employees. Okay, you may be eligible, but before you get too excited, there are four big restrictions you need to know about. First, at least one of your workers has to be arm's length. That means they're not a family member related to you through blood or marriage. Second, the business actually has to be your main source of income. Either more than half of your personal income has to come from your business, or your personal income from all other sources has to be less than $10,000. Third, every qualifying employee who wants to be included in the plan must be included. You can't pick and choose. And finally, this is the big one, your contribution limits are really restricted. As the owner, you can't give yourself more than your lowest paid employee. Whatever you get, you have to offer them. And on top of that, if fewer than half of your employees are arm's length, you're capped at $1,500 per adult and $750 per child. Let me give you an example. Say you run a small restaurant with your wife and your buddy Jack, and you want HSA benefits for your family of four. Well, only Jack is arm's length. Your wife isn't because she's family. So that puts you under the 50% threshold, which means you're capped at $4,500 for your family. Because you can't give yourself more than your lowest paid employee, if you take $4,500 for yourself, you've got to offer Jack that same $4,500. See how that gets restrictive fast? Okay, scenario three, you're incorporated. This is where it gets good. Once you incorporate, your business becomes its own legal entity. So now you can be both the owner and the employee. And that's the magic. That separation is exactly what makes an HSA work. Most of the restrictions just disappear. Even if you're the only person in your corporation, an HSA still works. You just need three things. One, you need to be actually working for your business. Two, you need to be paying yourself as an employee, usually through T4 income. And three, your contribution limit has to be reasonable for the role. We've got a whole video on what a reasonable limit actually means, so make sure you go check that out. Bottom line, for most sole proprietors, an HSA is either off the table or not worth the hassle. If you're really serious about using one, incorporating is usually the cleaner path. That's why at Frontier HSA, we only work with incorporated businesses. If you're interested in setting up an HSA, we recommend talking to an accountant and seeing if incorporation makes sense for you. All right, that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you've got any questions, head over to frontierhsa.ca for more tips on getting the most out of your plan. See you next time.